What's up, everybody? Welcome into another edition of SSPN Position Breakdowns. Ethan, it's officially draft week, man. It's
Mm-hmm.
Sunday. We were talking about a bunch of stuff before this, and I didn't even talk to you about that. I had that realization just like a little bit ago, being on Victor Wembanyama's Instagram and seeing all the Spurs stuff. It's just we're almost there. We're gonna have our draft live stream, but I was just like, wow, it's this week. We're like 4 days away.
Yeah, and it's unnerving, and I'm still in shock that it even happened. But
Me too, man.
Spurs got the best fans in the business for real, according to my boy Wemby. So,
Heck yeah. Heck yeah. And this may be a position that he's playing, Ethan, but because we're not for sure yet, we're not going to talk about him. And because it's technically the pre, draft,
pre-draft.
free agency position breakdowns. Don't worry, we'll come back before the season and break down all the positions when we have, them all settled and who's going to play what and know who's going to training camp. But we wanted to set the stage beforehand for all the other stuff. Now, obviously, these next two positions are going to have a big asterisk, as I just mentioned earlier, with depending on where Victor ends up playing, he's going to have a huge impact on whichever position that is. But because we don't know that yet, we're just going to talk about the guys that are on the roster as of right now, who potentially could come back, how their seasons went this year, and all that good stuff that we've already been talking about. And so let's just start off from rip. Jeremy Sohan.
Mm.
I think me and you have both agreed and said on this show that after this season, and people might think this is crazy, but with the way that his rookie season went, it feels like he might have the highest ceiling on this team now. And it's because of his improvement throughout the season. We've even heard rumors of him growing a little bit more. Keldon
Mm-hmm.
has said about it, talked about it. I believe there were other players that have mentioned it. Still just 20. He might still be 19, but if he did pass his birthday, then he's still only 20 years old. I mean, these guys we drafted last year aren't even old enough to drink yet still, and I mean, just to put things in perspective, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he just oozed potential this season, and you saw why the Spurs picked him at number 9 over a player like, and of course there might still be people in the comments that are like, I'm about to start a war when I say this, Ethan, but like Atari Eason. There were a lot of other players that the Spurs could have picked. Even me and you were wondering, okay, maybe we could have picked, somebody like Atari Eason who has a little bit of better shooting, or, just any of these, a lot of these different players that many Spurs fans thought, if we take ourselves back to last year, could have been picked over Jeremy.
Mm-hmm.
After watching this season, it just once again is like, okay, Jude, just trust the Spurs front office, because this dude's game, there's so many more layers to this dude's game that were shown this year.
Oh, for sure. And who I feel most sorry for, Jude, are the people that watched like the first 2 weeks of the season and then tuned out for the rest of the
Yeah.
year, because their opinion of Jeremy will be, oh, he's a good defender, but he's ASS everywhere else
Yeah.
on the court,
Right.
and he's got a terrible jump shot. He's got 30% from free throw line, all
Hmm.
of those things. But if you watch from beginning to end, like you said, he improved in every single area of the game. Defensively, he just got more confident. He wasn't getting uh, into as much foul trouble because he learned the little nuances of everybody's
Hmm.
games, rip throughs, that sort of thing. Don't have your hand in the cookie jar. But offensively is where his growth was really prominent. I mean, we can talk about his jump shooting. He went from
Right.
not being able to hit a three to hitting about 20. I mean, it only averaged out to about 24%, but he became a threat from outside.
It was a significant change. He went from like, okay, just leave this dude on an island every time, to like, okay, now we can't leave him completely wide
Yeah.
open. Right.
Yes, exactly. And I think that all stems from his improvement as a free throw shooter. He went to that
Yes.
one-handed form, and that jump.
Coincided with that.
What did he shoot? Like, I know like the first 2 games he struggled with the one hand, but then it like jumped up to like 75 or 80%.
Yeah,
Like,
he was, I forget what the number was, but I remember, I think it was Dan Weiss,
mhm.
actually, who brought it up on one of the Spurs broadcasts. But
Yeah.
they were just, it was like he jumped from like 40% to like 80% or something.
Mhm.
Like, even if it was lower than that, it was still like at least a 30% jump after
Yeah.
switching to the one-handed free throw. Like, I mean, he went from being, all right, let's try to not have him at the line. If
Yeah.
he would be our last choice if like we could choose who could shoot free throws. Obviously he would still get to the line a lot because of his play style, but it was night and day. It was completely different once he went to the one-handed. It was like, okay, this is a dude that most of the time is at least going to get one here.
Yeah. He came into the team offensively with the skill set of good off ball cutter, great in transition, can get you some dunks, very athletic, high motor, and really just like, pick and roll handoffs. Like he can
Yep.
he can hand the ball off and set a screen or make a backdoor cut, like underrated playmaker. And he finished the season with being able to be a primary ball handler from time to time. I think that's still something he needs to work on
Yeah.
because he got picked a little bit too much for my eyes. But he also had an in between game. He showed us some post move flashes that neither of us saw at
Yeah.
Baylor. Like I don't know
Mm-hmm.
where that came from, but all of a sudden he's hitting turnaround jumpers, up and unders, like an array of moves that took me by surprise, and I think the rest of the fans as well. So in summary, his ceiling is a lot higher offensively than I think even you and I were giving him credit for when he first came in.
Yeah. And also, I mean, wasn't he starting game one?
Yeah, he was, which
Like,
was a shocker to him
I
too.
know that this is the season. It makes sense when you add the context for the season. It makes sense, but when you take in the history of the Spurs, that doesn't happen.
Yeah, no,
And Pop doesn't just say, like, he doesn't just compare people to Manu. Like, okay, did he do that with Lonnie?
I don't think he did. I think. Oh, you know what? He did. He did.
He
You're
did.
right.
Okay, so
He did.
we'll keep it real with you guys.
He did.
That one didn't work, but I think we all know after watching a season of Jeremy that this is very different. And also, I would say that in the Pop context with Lonnie, he was kind of comparing it more to his play style then,
And his
where
role.
right, where with Jeremy, he's comparing it more to his mentality.
Yes.
So
Extremely
those are also a little bit of two different things as well. But had to mention that it hasn't worked out once in the past, but I
Yeah.
have a lot more confidence in this one.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And his pest play style is also super
Mm-hmm.
infectious. And I love
Yep.
that he's a dog out there. Like if things aren't going well, he's going to start a fight. He's going to hit somebody a little too hard. We remember the Markeith Morris WWE
So
takedown
good.
and the what's that point? Chris Dunn held onto his jersey after he hit a tough layup against the Jazz, and Jeremy didn't like that one bit, and he pushed his forearm away really hard. I love guys that do stuff like that. He's really bringing out that Dennis Rodman comparison.
Yeah, for sure. That's why you have a lot of shades of that.
Mhm.
Not
Rising
just the
star
hair.
too. Sorry,
Yep.
he was
Yeah.
actually a
No.
rising star.
Exactly. As a rookie, I mean, when was the last time that happened for
I
us?
think Keldon had it his sophomore year, but that was the year
But
we
see
didn't have
that,
the rising star game.
and that was also his sophomore year, so
Yeah,
that wasn't his rookie season. Like, when was I had the Spurs even had a rookie in the Rising Stars
no,
game?
because Devin got snubbed both times. Yeah, I don't
Well,
think
I was just
Kawhi.
gonna yeah, maybe
I think
I
he
don't
did.
know. I'd have to go back and look at the
He did. I know for a
how
fact he
you know
did
for a fact.
because
Okay.
I remember that was the year they did the Chuck versus Shaq draft because it was like they picked out of the rookies
Yeah.
and sophomores and he was on the board.
Interesting.
Yeah.
No, so talking about Jeremy's playmaking, because I agree with you, there's definitely can still be some improvements there. And I think a big reason for potentially wanting those improvements is if he potentially doesn't play right here, Ethan. We've
Mhm.
talked about this in some of the other position breakdowns and just a bunch of the videos that we've done. I mean, since Pop made the comment and he played minutes at point guard, we've been talking about this from time to time on the channel. So what are kind of your thoughts on his playmaking potential as a ball handler from what you saw this season? And then after that, we can kind of talk about what we think about him potentially actually moving to the point guard.
In terms of playmaking, being able to make the correct pass, having a good field of vision, being a general, I think he's already got that skill set. I think he understands the offense. He knows where guys need to be. I'm not worried about that. The only thing I think he needs to fix, if Pop does in fact want him to play point guard, is he needs to improve as a ball handler, literally just ball handling, because he's a little loose with it. He is like
Yeah,
6'9", so he's kind of got the high bounce, and he doesn't get necessarily as low as some of the other guards. So
not
he's an
as much
easy.
control.
Exactly. He's an easy defend if he's trying to be like a natural point guard coming off of
Just trying
screens.
to cross people up, right? Yeah.
Yeah, like at this point in his career, he doesn't have that in his bag. So if he could start working on that, I think he could absolutely
Yeah.
be like a point forward, like a Scottie Pippen role. Like I could definitely see that being in his future. But
Yeah, for sure. I think that's really honestly because I was trying to think of what I thought, and I guess what I would have said is maybe like some more just specific passes from him, because I feel like when he brought the ball up the floor, and this isn't saying he was doing a bad job of running the offense at all. I think he was doing a good job, but it was more like he'd set everything up, then he'd pass it off to somebody and they'd kind of do more of like the actual distributing, if you will, like with the ball, like literally like dishing out assists. And granted, he obviously had assists as well. But when I think of just him, like when he was in that role, like literally where we were playing him at the one at times,
Mm-hmm.
um, that's kind of what I remember, him taking it up the floor, setting up the offense, and then, and granted, a lot of times with the Spurs, because they run so many plays and so many sets, that is the point guard's job.
Yeah.
But still, when you think about Trey Jones, there's a difference in the amount of distribution between him and Jeremy Sohan when they were taking the ball up the floor. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And it probably stems from the fact that he can't dribble around a screen.
Right, exactly, because of the control, like you said.
Yeah.
That was a great way to describe it, because I was trying to think of like, okay, how do I verbalize like how he can get better, and that
If
I
this
think
was
that
the
summed it up.
80s and it was simply just backing down the defender and then making a pass, like he's ready. He is ready.
He's there.
Yeah, he is at that point. But no, you
Oh
actually have
my
to have
gosh.
like a back.
Right. Yeah. No, absolutely. And that was something that's really, honestly, like when I think about his game, that's probably the most sloppy part,
Hmm.
if you
For sure.
will. And not to say that a lot of his game is not sloppy, but I would just like to say, if you had to pick something, that might, the more I'm thinking about it, that might be really the
Opens up
main thing,
everything else.
he really needs to improve on, honestly.
For sure.
Obviously, well, shooting as well. That
Hmm.
those would probably be the two main things. If you wanted to say something other than shooting, that would be it. But what do you think about him potentially? Like, what are your what's your future vision, Ethan?
Hmm.
What's your crystal ball on Jeremy Sohan and the point guard position?
Well, I love the Scottie Pippen comparison, and if he can get a killer crossover in his bag, maybe even a Grant Hill comparison, early Grant Hill with the '90s, where he's not necessarily the point guard. Like there's still a guy like a Trey
Yeah.
Jones on the court, but he can definitely do a lot of the facilitating, especially if we do that high low action with him and Wemby. That'll be filthy. I mean, he already does it with Zach Collins and Mamu.
Mm-hmm.
So make that Wemby instead of Zach or Mamu, and it's even more difficult to stop. But I think he could definitely be an all-star in that role. I mean, I don't see any reason why he shouldn't be.
What do you think? Because this is something we've talked about, like literally this season, potentially. Like, say the Spurs, just for the sake of conversation, the Spurs are like, we want to play Wembanyama at the 4. We
Hmm.
think we're going to get more out of him there. We think there's going to be less toll on his body, and that will allow him to kind of just. We just think it's going to utilize his skill set better, on the perimeter, because the power forward is more of the hybrid, front court position, if you will, and really that does match his skill set,
Yeah.
a lot. So, and that's why we've alluded to a lot. And I know that I'm not, you and me aren't the only people who think this. I know there's been people in the comments. I have a bunch of Spurs fan friends, and yes, they watch the show, but at the same time, like, there are a lot of people who, regardless of our thoughts on this, Ethan, could potentially see the starting lineup being Jeremy Sohan, Devin Vassell, Keldon Johnson, Victor Wembanyama, and Zach Collins. Just kind of, what are your thoughts on that and the prospects of it? I know we've talked about it before, but
Hmm.
maybe more just like the legitimate like possibility of that.
I think it's a very legitimate possibility. And the more I've been thinking about it, Jude, the more I like it. Because, even when we had Tony Parker as our point guard, he wasn't a high assist guy. He was like
Mm-hmm.
6 or 7, maybe.
Yeah.
Right? Like
No, very good point.
we are a facilitating team by community, I guess is how you could say that. Like everybody in that lineup at one point or another has had to be the primary playmaker. Keldon
Yeah.
did it a lot last year. Devin has had
Yep.
flashes where he's had to do it. Jeremy, like you've been talking about, he had to do it at Baylor and
Even
last year.
Zach out of the post
Even Zach.
sometimes.
Even Zach. So I think if we really go back to that 2014 freedom of movement,
Mm-hmm.
lots of screens, lots of off ball movement and crazy action like that leads to Wemby in the post. You know what? I even this is kind of off topic. We might even have to throw in a few triangle plays in there because of it might
I
actually
see what
work.
you're saying.
Yeah, especially if we're gonna say that Jeremy Sohan is the point guard, like i.e. Scottie Pippen. Um, I don't see that really not having a natural small point guard like Trey Jones in that lineup. I don't think that would necessarily be a bad thing.
Devin can take it up too, man.
Devin can
That's the
take it up.
thing.
Yeah.
Keldon can
Yeah.
also. Wemby can.
Wemby can. He's got guard skills. I mean, we're joking, but we're
I
actually
forget
not.
about
Like,
that. No, like genuinely. Yeah.
yeah, I'm with it. I mean,
I am too.
we,
I'm not convinced yet that they're going to do it.
me neither.
One, just because I think they like Trey Jones a lot.
Me too. I love
Um,
Trey Jones.
Two, I agree. Two, Sohan still is a really good modern four.
Mm-hmm.
Like he really just, even with what we were talking about, and I love the appeal. I especially like the defensive versatility of that lineup.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, after watching, I mean, we'll see. But after watching Wembanyama in the playoffs, I'd like him at the four. I really would like him at the four. I'm not to say that I think that if he plays the five, that's going to affect his potential or change the. I don't really think it's going to have a giant impact whether or not he plays either one. But I would prefer. I think I just like that better. I like how that fits his skill set better, and I think maybe down the line, when he gets on a little bit more muscle, if we want to put him at the five then, but he also might just be, I mean, he's still 7'4". Like, how much muscle do you want to put on? I know he's talked about Giannis. This is a whole nother video about it. And we could sit here and speculate about, Wembanyama and what he's going to do, physically, but we really don't know. So that's why I'm saying as of right now, and what I do know of him and his frame, I would prefer him at the four, but I also, if he comes out at the five, like I've said this before on a podcast, like I'm going to trust Pop over me, bro. Like I don't have the most wins in NBA history,
Mm-hmm. And him at the five, like it would really only be a problem against Jokic, Embiid, Sabonis, AD, and then
Maybe Miles Turner.
Miles. Yeah,
I mean, like I say that just because like he could back him down, not necessarily.
No, yeah,
like,
you're right. You're right. And then in that case, also Steven
overall.
Adams or
Right.
Nurkic, like they're just thicker.
That's what I'm
But
saying. So like, if we can have somebody that can help him bang, and I think they're gonna do that, man. It's just and it's like, anyways, I was gonna say Timmy was a four. I know that's different, but
it's not the end of the world if Jeremy comes off the bench either, because that's something that he's done. I would much rather him play next to Wemby at all times at that force, but
yeah.
It's a conundrum, and I don't know the answer. I don't think anyone will know the answer until game one, regular season.
Shoot, dude, maybe the Spurs don't even know the answer. Like, in all honesty, like they might just be waiting until training camp, and it's like, okay, let's get a look at this dude. Let's see. I think Zach Collins just did an interview recently, and he was talking about what it's going to be like to have another 7-footer in the gym, and like what it's going to be like to. I say another 7-footer. He's 6'11", but he said that. Y'all know what he's. Come on, well, if he puts the shoes on, he's 7 feet. All right.
Yeah.
Anyways, the point is they haven't been. I mean, now that I think about Charles Bassey's supposedly
6'11".
They list him as 6'11". The Sixers listed him at 6'9". Anyways, the point is Zach Collins did an interview and he was just saying with having another 7-footer and Wembanyama coming to practice, it's going to just up the intensity. That's what he was talking about. So, and I'm sure just him in general is going to up the intensity. But, the Spurs might be like, look, we're really going to find out when we get a good look at those guys for 2 weeks in training camp, and then we'll kind of figure it out. And, coming into last season, they didn't know what the lineups were going to be. But still, at the same time, I want to say that we were honestly pretty accurate with what we thought the starting lineups were going to be. We just weren't sure if it was going to be Sohan to start. I think we might have said, like, KBD.
I think I did, yeah.
But that's not, like, once again, that's not, if you're a Spurs fan, that's not crazy. You know what I'm saying? That's like one off. Like, so that would honestly, like, that would be the flip side of us saying, like, well, we're not sure if we're going to start, or that would be the version, of us saying, well, we're not sure if we're going to start Sohan. We don't know if the Spurs would start Sohan at point guard. So I'm just going to say Trey Jones, Devin Vassell, Keldon, Sohan, Wembanyama, right? Last year would have been like, well, I'm not sure if they're going to start a rookie, so I'll put KBD in the starting spot. You see how that's kind of similar. So it's all just, they're going to surprise us, especially like, once again, as we talked, as much as this is a super exciting season and the Spurs are going to be a lot better, it's still, they're not contending. So like it's still, everything's still a little bit of a wild card.
This is a season to figure things out.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was kind of what it was like last year to an extent too, but it's like now that we have like a more clear vision, it's almost like we're going harder on
Last year was a tank. Let's be honest. Last year was figure things out while we're tanking.
Yeah, but like we got to
see
see like certain things from some guys. Like if we don't have last season, Champagne's not on the roster. Like you know what I'm saying. Like this year, it'll be a little bit different, but it'll be the same in the sense as we're gonna see who fits next to Wembanyama. Where last year it was just like we're gonna suck. Let's see who can make it through this season and like have some like good moments during it, because that's tough to do.
Yes.
So anyways, you know, we've got this far, Ethan, and we haven't even talked about Sandro Mamukelashvili and Keita Bates-Diop. And for those of you guys who don't know, Keita Bates-Diop is actually an unrestricted free agent, but with the way that his career went in San Antonio and how it played out, Ethan and I would be very surprised if he doesn't come back. We'll have to see, but I would still bet on him coming back. And then Sandro Mamukelashvili is also a free agent, but he is a restricted free agent. So the Spurs have rights over him. They also have bird rights on KBD, which basically means that they're allowed to go over the cap to sign him.
Yeah, I hope we get him back. He's been huge for us as far as being a leadership guy, a veteran on the team. I know he's still really young, but for us, he's a veteran, and he fits a mold. He's a 3-and-D guy now. He's improved from
27.
Terrible. Yeah, 27%. Oh, he's 27 years old. He's improved significantly as a 3-point shooter, where in years past it was really hard to watch him shoot a 3.
Mm-hmm.
And last year he shot 39% on career highs, basically all across the board, except for rebounding. But if you want to nitpick, it's like 0.2 difference of his rebounding.
And it's because he jumped up 4 points. It was 4 points higher in scoring than in his last career high.
For sure, exactly. And he's a great defender. Not a great defender. He's a very good defender. He has the tools. He's very lengthy. He's pretty strong. He can guard along the perimeter. He can also take matchups with some thinner fours. And he doesn't make any mistakes, really. I mean, he knows our offense. He has been brought up pretty much in our offense, aside from the first 2 years in Minnesota. Good patience. You always make fun of the fact that he's so long. He could pick the ball up above his head and take 2 or 3
not make fun strides. Of it. It's just funny that he doesn't on his drives. Like sometimes he won't dribble. Like you just don't see that often.
And underrated patience and footwork as well. Like he has a lot of good pivot moves where he can kind of somehow get open, and he's so long he can be at like the free throw line and finger roll it in off the glass. It's like crazy. So I would absolutely bring him back.
Yeah, me too. I really liked his improvement this season. You know, stats aren't always a tell-all, but he had career highs and everything, and that's what it looked like watching him too. You talked about his jump shot. I mean, damn near 40%, and the rotation on the ball, the way it came out. I mean, just this season from the first 3 shot, even if he missed, I don't remember if he missed or made it, but I just remember watching him this season the whole year and being like, his shot looks better, and it was always better the whole year. You know, it didn't, and it was consistent. It didn't fall off. That's another thing that I liked as well. Just another reason that he is a versatile, valuable rotation modern forward. You know,
couldn't have said it myself better.
Can play the 3 and the 4, just exactly what you want right now.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Well, Ethan, so we talked about KBD. We talked a little bit about Sandro Mamukelashvili as well. I think this is he's definitely somebody that the Spurs want to bring back to training camp. That he was also in a post that they most recently made with him and Champagnie. That makes sense with the way their performances went. You know, it's so funny, Ethan. I went to the Champagnie game, if you will, which was in the Moody Center. And then I also went to the Mamu game when we beat the freaking Nuggets, and he came in because Zach Collins and Michael Porter Jr. fought. All of y'all remember that, I'm sure. And was matched up against Jokic, and Jokic, I just didn't think, probably just like, I mean, maybe he had heard of him on the Bucks, but I don't know, man, especially after these comments we've been hearing from Jokic, he probably had no clue who he was. And he probably was just a little bit more skilled. Me at the game, that's what I saw. I mean, yes, Jokic sometimes isn't the best defensively, but I think for me, Jokic was like, this dude's like stepping back from three or is just like pulling from three. Like, what? You know, like, and then he's making it. But it was like, I don't think Jokic was even expecting him to be shooting those. So not to take away from what Mamu did, because he was matched up with, you know, Nikola Jokic, the finals MVP. And we went out and won the game. I know it's one game, but that was, it was crazy that I got to go to both of those, but that was a crazy performance. And really throughout the rest of the year, he showed his versatility. We talked about how KBD is a modern, versatile, you know, kind of 3-4. I would say that Mamu is a modern, versatile 4-5. You know, he's definitely more of a small ball 5, but like 6'10", 240, can put the ball on the floor, plays the 3 for the Georgian national team, has skills, can pass, can shoot. And, you know, comes from a really disciplined program in Seton Hall. Played all 4 years there in college. So he's kind of got the U.S. game and the European game combined, as well as, you know, coming from Coach Bud in Milwaukee.
Yeah, and so we shouldn't have been surprised that he was able to come in and immediately be so effective because he played 4 years of college and was brought up by Coach Bud. Like, I'm sure he knew almost all of our offensive schemes immediately when he came in, and probably played defense kind of similar in a similar fashion. Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head, Jude. That was a very, very good breakdown of Sandro Mamu Kalashvili. I always compare him to Boris Diaw. For those of you that never have seen him play, really, Mamu, he's a solid playmaker, can play the 4 or 5, like Jude said, and, you know, has a lot of different skill sets. He's not unbelievable at anything,
right,
but he's good at everything. And he really doesn't have any gaping holes in his game, and he's still extremely young. So make him a rotational piece now and let him grow with the rest of the young core. I think he could hopefully be a solid piece moving forward.
I just had a thought, Ethan, and I don't know. I know I just said I think KBD is going to come back, and I would still say that. But if for some reason they decide not to, he could take a spot.
He could
because
they're so similar.
They are, and also if Sohan's playing the 1, then you've got Wembanyama and Mamu at the 4. Like that would he's also, I'm thinking about it, he's a little bit bigger than KBD. As much as we were talking about the length. Like I don't want to get rid of KBD, but I think that it's not 100% that we bring him back, because I think that there is a chance when you still have Mamu Kalashvili, and don't forget about Barlow,
Don B.
you could bring, I mean, really, you could bring both of those back, and that's not terrible. Like Mamu would not be a terrible backup for, and because the reason I'm mainly thinking about that, Ethan, is he's restricted, where while we do have the bird rights on KBD's unrestricted. And it's just Mamu's younger. And it's like, you know, he might fit the Wemby timeline a little bit better, has the European background as well. I was just thinking about that while you were talking. So that's something also to keep an eye on. You know, I know the Spurs really like KBD, so I don't know if that's for certain, but we just have so many guys on the roster right now that we can bring into training camp. And, you know, last year we were convinced that Romeo was going to get cut, and I forget who got cut instead, but I just remember being convinced he wasn't. Yeah, I think Wieskamp. You're right. Yeah, we thought Wieskamp was going to make it over him. And so, you know, there's a lot of things. We'll have to see how it plays out, but that could be something where it's a little bit more minor detail. But, you know, if somebody offers KBD a good contract, you know, you might just roll with Mamu, or they might just decide, you know, we really liked what we saw from Mamu last year. He's a little bit younger, a little bit bigger. We're just going to roll with him, you know, and we want to see, and we think he matches the, you know, the Wemby timeline a little bit more as well.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, and also for Mamu, just as a player, the one thing I would say that he could still get better at is defense. That would be the only thing I would say.
That's basically what I was going to say. KBD's only thing that he has over Mamu really is experience and defense. But Mamu's a better playmaker. He's a better, you know, ball handler, better shooter. No, he's not even a better shooter.
He's more skilled. And
a way better rebounder.
Yeah.
He averaged 7 boards a game last year.
Wow. That's something I forget. Because honestly, when I think of those two, I have more memories in my head of KBD being a little bit more physical on the boards. But, I mean, it makes sense. He's taller than him, you know?
Yeah.
So do we want to talk about Dom Barlow? What
I
do
mean,
you think?
we could do it so quick. I'll do it real quick.
All right.
A lot of upside. He struggled last year. He had one really good game against the Dallas Mavericks where he had 20 and 20,
Where he was him.
where he was him.
Yeah.
Very athletic, high motor. Not enough of a sample size to make a prediction. If we can get him back on a two-way, let's do it. Make up the project.
I think that the G League needs to have an all-star game,
Mm.
and he needs to be in it, and
Yeah.
he needs to get every G League award ever.
I would say so as well.
Because he gets like 25 and 12 every time he plays.
Juju never said anything smarter.
I agree, bro. Alrighty, y'all. Okay, honestly, with the new two-way contracts that you mentioned, with the NBA teams being able to have more guys on the team, act like in all seriousness, that I think that gives him an avenue to staying on the Spurs. Will it happen? I'm not sure, but I'd honestly be surprised if they didn't at least bring him to training camp.
Me too.
But anyways, y'all, thanks for hanging out with us today. We are going to be back on Monday, so that's tomorrow, to finish all this up with the center's position breakdown, and then we'll be 3 days away from the draft. Y'all be sure to hang out at our draft reaction show. We'll be live during the draft when the Spurs get the number 1 pick, and it will be interesting to see what happened with the other 2 picks, Ethan, or what happens with the other 2 picks. Because maybe there's a trade that the Spurs make to go up and get somebody else that they like, or maybe they end up picking 2 other different guys. Another thing that I wanted to talk about before we end this, Ethan, in specifics with the trade up, is I saw an article today on Twitter that was talking about maybe Bilal Coulibaly, and this was Air Alamo. I forget the guy's name. I want to give him a shout out. It's not Noah Magaro George, but I think it's Ariza is his last name. I might be butchering that, but I've seen some other stuff from him on Twitter. He puts out some good stuff. But he was saying maybe Bilal Coulibaly is the person we're trading up for that we've been hiding in plain sight like the whole time. Or not we've been hiding in plain sight, but it's like while he's been rising up through these draft boards, and this is Wembanyama's teammate, who's an 18-year-old versatile French guard wing. That could be the one where it's like this whole time we're talking about Anthony Black, we're talking about all these other dudes, and it's like they're going to know he's been shooting up draft boards. They liked him the whole time. They're going to trade up and get him and bring him on. And where would he fit in, right, Ethan? He would fit right into that third string shooting guard position.
Beautiful. Couldn't have said it better myself.
And he's 18 years old as well, which means that you've got more time with him to, you can allow him to sit behind Devin and Malachi for a year.
Did you see what Wemby said about Coulibaly?
He compared him to the Thompson twins, right? That's another reason I brought this up. Exactly. So he maybe that doesn't happen. I know that there was another rumor that apparently a team guaranteed him at 14. I saw at the last finals game in the LNB, the Kings owner was at that game watching it. So maybe the Kings have an eye on Bilal as well and want to trade up. But they also could have just been, scouting other guys too, because you can see a lot of good players in the French league. Maybe they want to bring them on. That's a good get. The French league finals is a good place to go if you're an NBA scout right now.
For sure.
Or not just a scout, but an NBA executive too. Both. But that's something else to watch. But if you guys enjoyed the content, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe below. If you want to stay updated with everything, follow us on Twitter at SSPN on YT, at Jude McLaren, and at Ethan_Quintero. We appreciate y'all. We'll catch y'all on the next one. Go Spurs, go. See y'all later.